When it comes to protecting your home floor, you're damn right the Sacramento Kings and Kings fans should be greedy, especially with the final 4 games of this 5-game homestand. Frankie Cartoscelli from the Return of the Roar podcast and Sactown Sports 1140 joins me right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10. And I apologize for the lack of content over the last couple of days. The amazing Kings win with De'Aaron Fox dropping 22 in the fourth quarter in Utah. No podcast after that. Was moving into my new house, which you can see behind me. The office is coming together. There's still boxes. The decorations in the background have not been set up yet, but at least got the computer and podcast set up so I can record a little bit for you. And then yesterday, I didn't go to the Atlanta Hawks Kings game in Sacramento inside the Golden One Center. Didn't go to that game because I got food poisoning, which is a wonderful experience. If you've never been through it, I hope you never have to. It's trash. And so I couldn't move, let alone do anything of the sort of going to a game and recording a podcast. So I truly apologize about that. The good news is, though, I have today's pod. I have a pod with a guest tomorrow scheduled, and then I will be at the Kings and Lakers game on Saturday. We'll do a post-game pod after that. So I'm trying to catch up, get you the content that you deserve here. Again, apologies for the lack of content here to start the new year. Certainly not what I like to do. But on today's show, Frankie Cartoscelli and I are going to heavily discuss protecting home floor. And I tweeted out last night that the Kings loss to the Atlanta Hawks was their one excused loss during this 5-game homestand. They have to win the next 4. Like, to me, it's not negotiable. Anything less, to me, is a disappointment, a major disappointment for this team. Frankie and I are going to discuss that in detail. Plus, the first fan voting for the All-Star game dropped today, and the Sacramento Kings have no representatives on it. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, neither got on it. And to me, that's not surprising in the least. And I could care less about fan voting. Frankie and I are going to discuss that and more, talk about the home court advantage and the crowd and the Golden Ones. We've been witnessing so much great conversation here with Frankie, so I hope you will enjoy. Feel free to respond to anything that you want to on Twitter at MattGeorgeSac. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. But for now, here's my conversation with Return of the Roars and Sactown Sports 1140's Frankie Cartoscelli. Happy to be joined by my friend from Sactown Sports 1140, Kings insider Frankie Cartoscelli, joining me. And Frankie, you were in the Golden One Center last night. I was not. Thank you for eating a cookie and a glizzy in my honor. I appreciate it. And you witnessed the Sacramento Kings lose a hard-fought game to the Atlanta Hawks. It sucks that the records are going to say that the Kings were swept by the Hawks, and in both those games, the Kings were on a second night of a back-to-back. But regardless, that's how the NBA schedule works. But we're going to talk a lot about scheduling here because this was game 1 of a 5-game homestand for the Sacramento Kings. They lost this game. This homestand has a lot of very winnable games. They have the Orlando Magic coming up, the Los Angeles Lakers coming up, the Houston Rockets twice, and then they go on the road for a game against the San Antonio Spurs. But we're specifically focusing on this homestand. I said that last night's loss was the one excused loss for this 5-game homestand. Before I dive into why I said that more, because I don't want what I have to say to influence your thoughts on it, I'm curious what you think about that point.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for having me, by the way. I did have a hot dog in your honor last night. I tried to get other media members to rally around me and cheers to the great Matt Boogie George, but it was just me and Chris by ourselves. So, though, all love for you, man. Yeah, last night, look, second out of a back-to-back, they're always tough, but the traveling aspect of it is what, to me, made this one a little more complicated. The Kings had dead legs early, and I don't want to sit here and make excuses and say that's the reason why they lost last night. They had their opportunities. They had a 4-point lead with a minute left. I mean, to me, it seemed like the Kings were on their way to stealing a win in a game where they never were really in control. I mean, the Hawks were in control from the beginning, and only that late run is what kind of put the Kings in a good position. But I think I'll kind of echo what you're saying. This needs to be the one like oops of this homestand. They kind of had some of those mistakes earlier in this this past month when they went 3-3 on their previous homestand. But when you look at the opponents that are coming in, the Lakers, who are going to be on a second half of back-to-back themselves, the Magic, who, yeah, they've been playing well lately, but the Kings need to beat these teams that are low in the standings. And then you have the Rockets and Spurs, who are, to me, the only teams in the Western Conference that are out of the playoff picture. So last night, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and you would have loved to beat the Atlanta Hawks. And yeah, like you said, they're going to get swept by the Hawks this year, but maybe that's kind of a market correction, seeing the Kings swept the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are one of the best teams in the league. But depending on how you look at it, you can maybe make yourself feel a little better that way. But yeah, you can't have many more games like this. The Kings have the third easiest remaining strength of schedule in the NBA, and this upcoming stretch to me is a huge part of that. I mean, when the Kings get through this next 7-game stretch, I don't know what the remaining strength of schedule is going to say, but right now it is the third easiest because of this upcoming week and a half we have ahead of us.
Yeah, to me, this 5-game road trip was like 3-2 is the minimum, like bare minimum. And I'm not pleased about it, but like bare minimum. To me, 4-1 was the expectation. 5-0 was the goal. Well, the goal is not going to be accomplished. The 5-0 is not going to happen. So 4-1 remains the expectation. And to me, like it goes beyond just playing teams who are or who have losing records. To me, it's all about setting yourself up for the inevitable pressure of the end of the season. We expect the Kings to be in a position that they're not usually in, and certainly haven't been in more than maybe once or twice, if you include like the bubble over the last 16 years. And that's jockeying for playoff positioning in a month of the season. And that's where a lot of teams really start to gear up. They start to get prepared and try and put themselves in a good position to make a deep playoff run. That's where a lot of other experienced teams that we expect the Kings, if they're going to stay in the 5th, 6th seed area, they're going to be amongst the experienced teams with playoff experience already. That's where those teams really come alive and figure it out because they've been there before. They know how to do it. The Kings have not yet. To me, this is all about building a safety net or building yourself as much of a buffer as possible for those tough months and for those tough weeks towards the end of the season. If you build a 6-7 game over 500 cushion just during this stretch, it's easy to see or easy to imagine 1, 2, 3, 4 of these games coming back to haunt you, because any of those games could be the difference between the Kings being 5th and 6th and not having a playoff or not having to worry about the plan, or 7th and 8th and having to play in, which is, I think, a significant difference. It's all about handling your business ahead of time and solving problems today.
Yeah, and I think Chris Watkins and I were talking about this when we recorded like an hour ago, that Kings teams of the past, I mean, a year ago today, the Kings were probably, 13th in the West, looking up at the standings saying, well, we can maybe sneak in with this stretch here. The Kings right now are the 5 seed in the West. They're in first place by percentage points in the Pacific Division. It's January 5th. I don't think anybody saw that coming, and the Kings need to be greedy. They should be, and I think that's something that people have been saying on Twitter as Kings fans shouldn't be greedy, no, be greedy. The Kings have played themselves in this position because they have been a good basketball team. And when you have losses like last night or Washington or Charlotte, those are ones that kind of really sting, because when you see the Kings turn around and beat teams that they quote unquote, I don't think you say shouldn't be beating, but that's how it was entering those Cleveland games or what have you. The Kings can take care of business and make it so they can stay where they are right now. If they can stay where they are right now, they can start having that discussion a month from now saying, maybe we don't need to worry about the play-in. Let's worry about making the 6th seed. Forget the single elimination or 2-game elimination BS. Let's go ahead and get in and enjoy a 7-game series and really get a full taste of this playoff environment. Because the Kings, to me, if they can just get in and get a taste of that playoff atmosphere, that playoff environment, you see teams that become repeat offenders in the playoffs. They keep coming back. You don't see many one-hit wonders in the postseason. Usually guys that get in or teams that get in, they stay there. And that's something the Kings right now are in a position of, they're in the driver's seat. They can play their way into a position, like you said, 7-8 games above 500, even though they've struggled and they're 0-7 when trying to go 5 games over. they can use this stretch to pull above that line. And it has to start this weekend. I mean, you have the Lakers on Saturday, who are on the second night of a back-to-back. You have Orlando on Monday, then you have a back-to-back against Houston. So the time is now to make that strike.
And you said being greedy, and I understand to some extent, but also I just call it a winner's mindset. Like if you're walking into this road trip or this homestand and going, well, I hope they go 3-2, but we can't expect more than that because we don't want to be too greedy or blah, blah, blah context, this context. And I know there's context of, God forbid, somebody gets injured or second night of back-to-back. So there's always context that affects games. That's why you can't just print out a schedule at the beginning of the year and start predicting wins and losses, although we all like to do that just for fun. But to me, like the Sacramento Kings have to approach each one of these games going, no, we got to win these games, especially on your home floor. Now you go on a road trip and like 3-3 on a 6-game road trip, like what they did earlier, going 500 on the road. That's what good teams do. Like that should be the goal. That should be the expectation. And I'm okay with that. But when you're at home, regardless of the teams you're playing, but especially when you're playing teams that are or have a worse record than you, that you are better than. Like it's not controversial to say the Sacramento Kings are a better team than the Atlanta Hawks. It's not controversial to say they're better than the Orlando Magic or the Houston Rockets. Like prove that. That's what good teams are supposed to do, is prove that. And I think it's fair to say the Sacramento Kings have established themselves as a good team. Now, the gap between good and great, and I've talked about this before, that gap is monstrous. And I don't think anybody expects the Kings to go from good to great. And maybe 5-0 on this homestand is what great teams do. But 4-1 should not be a overachieve or a pleasant surprise for Sacramento Kings fans or the Sacramento Kings themselves during this road trip. I think it genuinely should be the expectation.
Yeah, and they've done it before. I mean, when you look at I'm looking at their game log here, a lot more green in wins than red in losses. So they're a winning team. And like you said, it's not controversial to say they're better than Atlanta or the Lakers, or it's factual. The Kings are better than all these teams that they're playing. And it's factual because it's in the win-loss record. It's factual in the numbers. The Kings have had a high-powered offense. They have two players that could be all-stars, one in Domantas Sabonis, who should be a lock to be in the all-star game. They have some supporting cast members that have taken some strides this year and made this team what they are right now, which is it's a legitimate competitor in the Western Conference. So they need to act that way. Like you said, they need to come out and take care of home court. They do have a winning record at home, but when you lose games like last night, I think they're 11-9 at home this year. To me, that's just not going to cut it. Like it needs to be a clear difference between home and away. And that usually is what the case is for a lot of winning teams in the NBA. Usually there is teams are better at home statistically. And the Kings have been 500 on the road, which is to me something I never thought I would see at this point in the year. The Kings being 500 through almost 20 road games. And that's huge. That's also a huge part of why the Kings are in the spot they're in right now. But to me, you have a lot of home games for this next month. You have a 4-game homestand coming up this week. Then you have another 4-game homestand at the end of January before you go on a 7-game road trip. That's 8 home games, or 8 more home games. I think you need at least 6 of those. Like to me, I think you need to be greedy and I'm saying greedy again, but you need 6 of those home games. I mean, you need to take care of Golden One Center. And the Kings are selling out this arena every night. The environment is incredible. There's a bomb cyclone going off right now. And Golden One Center was sold out last night. It was deafening during that last drive of the game. And you need to take advantage of that. You have to. This is something the Kings have not had in at least 4 or 5 years. This kind of home court advantage. Since Golden One Center and it was in its first or second year, the Kings have not had this kind of advantage, and they need to use every piece of it.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. If you're like me and you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then I have the perfect thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty, and I'm a picky eater. Seriously, they're so delicious. You wouldn't think that they're good for you, but they're actually delicious, and they're perfect for that New Year's resolution. What makes Built so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like candy bars while maintaining Amazing macros, like only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built bars. You can pick up to a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors like brownie, batter, and churro. Trust me, you can thank me later. Give them a try. Built.com. The Kings have been playing a lot of close down to the wire games recently. And on one hand, I'm like, this is great experience for them to get. They've gotten 3 wins by 1 point recently. So it's like, okay, they're learning how to close out these close games, which is something consistently Sacramento has struggled with. They'd maybe beat a team that was ahead late and just fall apart or not be able to answer late runs. Like the Kings have shown a resiliency, especially on their home floor. The win against Denver, the win, and Kevin Huerter hit that big team that was again. Oh, Utah. And then what De'Aaron Fox did in the fourth quarter at Utah. Like it's good for them to get this experience. On the other hand, should we be concerned that Sacramento is so consistently, especially at home, not putting together wins by comfortable margins, or at least like the Kings really struggled in that Utah win at home to create any sort of separation. Like they could not get above 9 points. Now, granted, I thought the Utah Jazz play a lot better than their roster indicates. I think they're a decent team. Like I think they play pretty well, and they just would not go away. So credit to them. But Sacramento failed to pull away in that game, nearly got that game stolen out from underneath them. The Denver Nuggets, you expect the Kings to lose, especially on the second night of a back-to-back with DeMontis Sabonis and thumb. But like, is there any part of you that goes, okay, I would like to start this winning by 6, 7, 8, 9 point margins a little bit to, one, keep the heart rate down, and 2, show, okay, establish yourself as that better team, especially in this upcoming stretch?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of Kings fans right now going to their local Walgreens and getting their blood pressure checked because it's been tough, man. It's been tough. And I'm looking at their, like, the Brooklyn game was a complete blowout. They blew out San Antonio a couple nights later. The Lakers, they beat by 15. Other than that, there have not been that many games, especially on the home floor of the Kings of Indiana, obviously, the Indiana game too. There's only a handful of games where the Kings have had a very comfortable, I don't want to call it a laugher, but yeah, have had some laughers. And the Kings could use those right now. They are having to bear down and claw their way to these narrow wins. And even like last night, falling short by a couple points. Or even Memphis, it's a game that they were in late and Memphis went on their run to kind of put them away. They are showing an incapability to put games away. And to me, that's what's setting them apart from being a really good team. The fact that if they're up by 8 points, 9 points early in the fourth or late in the third, stretch that into a 15, 16, 20-point lead. I mean, they need to be able to put teams away so they can give some of their guys like Sabonis and Fox a rest. Sabonis played 40 minutes last night. He's been playing 40 minutes, probably more than he ever has in his career. I'm not sure. I think I have it right here at what he's averaging this year on the season minutes-wise. Domantas Sabonis this season is averaging, I think he's averaging 36 minutes per game. He's averaging 35 minutes per game, which is career high. So getting those guys some rest and getting them some relief down the stretch is going to be huge. And in order to do that, you have to put these games out of reach so you can let those other guys come in and finish the job. But obviously, wins are wins. And when you look at the win-loss record, you can't see how those wins kind of came to be. But throughout the wear and tear and the grind of a season, these guys are going to need a little bit of relief on that end. They need to have some comfortability and have some rest and have some of these games get really out of control. And the thing is, they've had opportunities to do that. They just haven't capitalized. And that falls down to getting sloppy late, some turnovers. They had some turnovers late their night in Utah. They've had some turnovers last night and some bad fouls against the Hawks, some bad defense. The defense has been in another bad spell after kind of having an up and down start to the year. We're back in one of those down portions of play. So getting those things figured out and kind of rounding out who is in your rotation, who's not, and finding the right kind of formula of which players can get you to that point where you can be comfortable and get those 8-9 point leads into blowout wins. That to me is going to be huge for this team in the second half of the year.
You make a really, really excellent point about keeping your main guys, Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, especially as fresh as possible down the stretch, especially if the Kings expect to be playing more games in a season than De'Aaron Fox has ever played in his career, which is more than 82. We're looking at that, and we're also looking back to my other point at what the Kings can do during the regular season to prepare themselves to the lessons that they can learn during the regular season that they can incorporate in the playoffs. That, like, a lot of times it takes teams making the playoffs to learn those lessons. So I'm not expecting the Kings to be able to. I look at it like an AP course in high school, right? It's a course that you can take to get college credit right away. Well, if the playoffs is college, what can the Kings do during the regular season, high school, to learn those lessons ahead of time? I'm wondering, are closing out those close games, winning those 1-2 point games, whether they're at home or on the road, do you think learning how to close out that games counts as a lesson learned to help in the playoffs? And more than likely, if the Kings, especially in the opening round, like, the expectation is the Kings make the opening round, they're probably not making it past the opening round. I would love for this team to do it. I think it's fair to say that's the expectation at this point in time. So if the Kings are going to win a handful of games during that opening round, they're probably going to be close games. So in your mind, is that a lesson that the Kings can learn to hopefully incorporate towards the playoffs? And what are other lessons that the Kings can learn over the course of this regular season that can come back, or we can notice or recognize come postseason time?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely lessons you can take. I mean, the Kings this year, they're 5-4 in 3-point games. So, I mean, they're winning more than they're losing in these close games. And as painful as they are for the fans to watch, I think it's as close to a playoff type finish or atmosphere, especially at home, that Kings fans are accustomed to. And even, I mean, especially the Utah game. That Utah game was in the Denver game. Those two games in particular were battles, were just complete battles. And I'll go ahead and highlight the Denver game, just how they were trading buckets for, I think, about 3 minutes in the fourth. It was back to back to back, just Jokic, Sabonis. I mean, everybody was just going at each other, at each other's throats. And that is something that I have not really experienced. I mean, Matt, you and I are the same age, and we've gone a majority of our lives without seeing the Kings play meaningful basketball games. And we've seen the Kings play some close games, sure, that have been exciting, but it has a different feel when your team has a winning record and you're going against the number 1 seed in the West and the Nuggets. And it just felt different. It feels like a playoff atmosphere. And I think Mike Brown said after the game that, who has been in countless playoff experiences and countless playoff games as an assistant coach, as a head coach, said that he had to remind himself it wasn't a playoff game. He said that it felt so intense and loud, and it felt like there was so much on the line that it didn't feel like it was a game in December. It just felt like a playoff game. And to me, the Kings having these experiences and pulling out some of these games, yeah, it absolutely is going to help them down the stretch. These games are so stressful and nail biting. Imagine, because I think that I'm not going to, I'll knock on wood, but there's going to be games in February, March, maybe even April that are going to be a lot more meaningful. And there's going to be a lot more on the line for this Kings team and a lot more stressful than the ones that are happening over the past week, 2 weeks. So having these in the tank and these in the bag and knowing that you can win. And again, like I said, you're winning more than losing in 3-point games. That's got to be nice to have as far as experience goes.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by LinkedIn. And as a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members that you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs is essentially like a really good scouting department for a team. They help you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools that go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job applications on all platforms. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, post food poisoning, Matt George is a bit cranky this morning.
Uh-oh.
And that might have translated onto Twitter to my response to Sactown Sports 1140's tweet about the fan voting. And that's a good segue into a conversation about the fan voting conversation. And you and Chris went into big detail on this in the Return of the Roar podcast. So we're going to spend very little time on this so that the listeners, you can go over and listen to that conversation on Return of the Roar. My issue, I've never liked fan voting. I always think fan voting is a piece of crap. And it's not a disrespect to NBA fans. There are millions of smart basketball fans out there. I'd say the majority of NBA fans are smart. They recognize who's an all-star and who's not. But it always becomes a glorified popularity contest to where markets and the teams that are on national TV more, which are typically big market teams that don't deserve it, cough, cough, LA Lakers, like these play more of an impact on fan voting and who makes it in than anything else or how players are doing. So the first fan votes come out. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis not on the list at all. I could not be less surprised by that. That was my expectation. I don't expect them to be on the list. I think fan voting is an absolute joke. The two of them absolutely deserve to be in the All-Star game, and it's going to be from the media panel and going to be from the player voting more than anything else. And still, if they're not in, then the league needs to do something about it and say, veto, we're putting the two of them in, because nobody or very few players in the league are playing better basketball than Domantas Sabonis right now. And De'Aaron Fox is a superstar in the fourth quarter like we've seen recently too. So the Kings are going to have an all-star this year. I can't accept any possibility of that not happening, and they should have too. But to me, Frankie, fan voting is a complete cluster. You know what? It's a joke. It does not matter. And as long as the Sacramento Kings are still in Sacramento and not a top seed team like a first or second team in the West, and as long as they don't have a transcendent Hall of Fame talent like a LeBron or a Kevin Durant or Steph Curry, they're not going to ever have any kind of splash on fan voting. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the Kings are a small market team, maybe the smallest in the NBA. I think they're down there at the bottom with, I think, San Antonio and Oklahoma City and down the list. But the fan voting aspect of it, yeah, I won't say I expected to see Sabonis and Fox like high up the list, but I expected to see them in the 9, 10, maybe the bottom. But it's a little disappointing to me. I mean, seeing the names on the list is what kind of gets me more irritated than anything. Seeing Austin Reeves high up the list, or not high, but on the list in general. Kevon Looney, who has been valuable to the Warriors, absolutely, but he's not an all-star. I mean, when you think about what an all-star is, Kevon Looney doesn't come to mind. So I'm not going to sit here on January 5th and overreact and freak out like Chris.
I will.
You get.
Where's my pitchfork? I'm angry.
It wouldn't really even matter if Fox had 300,000 votes or 400,000, because he's not going to start the All-Star game.
Right.
I mean, this is for starting. This is for starters. I think that's something that people kind of forget. This is for starters. The media and the coaches around the NBA, they select the reserves. Has that process started? Possibly. I'd imagine it probably is starting right now. So if you keep seeing what Sabonis and Fox are doing against opposing teams, those coaches, who I believe cannot vote for players on their own team, are going to take note of that. And I think Domantas Sabonis is pretty near a lock for the All-Star team. I don't know how you keep him off at this point. He has been, without a doubt, a top 3 big in the West. I mean, well, not counting the starters, I guess top 3 center in the West. So when you take into account the double-doubles, the rebounds per game, all that he brings on a nightly basis, Domantas Sabonis is an all-star, and he's been there before. Now, De'Aaron Fox, to me, is a little interesting. I think it might take an injury replacement. I think it might take some interesting things to take place for him to get in. He's a guard. The competition in the West is very, it's tough. But Sabonis, to me, if the Kings are going to have one all-star representative, it's going to be him.
So let's run through the guards really quick in the Western Conference, because Steph Curry leads the fan vote at number 1. No surprise there. Steph Curry is, like I said, transcendent talent. Although Steph hasn't played half the season to this point, or a decent chunk of the season because of injury now. I think he's set to come back here shortly. But to me, Steph Curry is going to be above De'Aaron Fox just because it's Steph Curry. Luka Doncic, yep, makes sense. John Morant, yes, makes sense. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I know he's putting up ridiculous numbers, so I think there's an argument there. But really, from this point, De'Aaron Fox is above all these players, in my opinion. Russell Westbrook, absolutely. Damian Lillard, absolutely. Devin Booker, tough. Like I think Devin Booker, there's an argument there just because of how good of a team Phoenix is or should be. And then Austin Reeves, Jordan Poole, forget about those. Like that, to me, those are absolute just toss outs. So like if we're talking about, I understand getting in as a guard in the Western Conference is very difficult. But if we're talking about the non-fan voting aspect, people who are supposed to have brains and pay attention to all the NBA, the media, and the players, not just their respective games or whoever's on national TV, like De'Aaron Fox has to be under heavy consideration for not a injury replacement, but for a player that goes in just period. And if you have a guard heavy all-star team, so be it. If there's better guards in the West than there is in the East and more better guards in the West than there are big men, so be it. Like De'Aaron Fox absolutely is. I think there's absolutely a debate for De'Aaron. To me, there's no debate whatsoever for Sabonis. None. Period.
No,
Like there's not a debate. There's only one person in the league who is doing what Sabonis can do, and he's a back-to-back MVP. Like it's done. It's over with. His win, like the win shares, his net rating on versus off for the Sacramento Kings. Like it's done. There's no argument against Domantas Sabonis being an all-star. There's not. So
he's gonna get in.
He absolutely has to. It's like if it's a first ballot type thing, he should be in regardless of the fan voting. I don't care if he starts or not. He's there.
I don't really. I'm not afraid of getting freezing cold take because I don't really have that many like hot takes. But I will say that I am willing to put like a 98 or 99% chance that Domantas Sabonis will be an all-star, barring injury. I mean, unless he decides he doesn't want to. I mean, he will be selected to be an all-star. Like it just there's no way around it. It is malpractice. I know the Kings have been really, screwed over in this process a couple of times. DeMarcus Cousins he should have been probably an all-star 2 more times than he was. But again, the Kings were horrible. The Kings have been a feel-good story of the NBA so far. They've been one of the better teams in the West. They are top 5. They're in first place in their division. They need an all-star. They're going to get one. It just comes down to, will they get 2? So that's just kind of where I'm at.
Domantas Sabonis is going to get his invitation to the All-Star game, and he's going to be so gassed from playing 40 minutes a night. He's going to be like, I'm okay. I'll sit on the bench. Don't play me, coach.
I'll
just chill. I'll be there, but I'll take it easy. Well, before we wrap up, Frankie, you brought up the home court advantage that the Kings have had, like how crazy the fans have been. I cut a WWE-style promo on the final show of 2022 just of how much pride that I had towards the city. Like, and you and I have both grown up fans of the Sacramento Kings. We've grown up. These are our people, right? This is our city. This is, and even though we've transferred our fandom and transitioned it into a professional career covering this team, and we take that very seriously, we don't shy away from wearing that fandom on our sleeve when it's appropriate to do so. And I think it's more than appropriate to do so when you're bragging and talking about the support of Sacramento Kings fans who are they're starting to get attention around the league, like that clip of Kevin Huerter's essentially game-winning 3 against Utah that broke microphones because of how loud it was in that arena. Like people started seeing that and going, oh man, look at what the Sacramento Kings are doing. Look at this Kings fandom. This is great. Now they've always been there. Like maybe the attendance wasn't good last year, but why would you expect the attendance to be good for that show of a team that the Sacramento Kings rolled out there that absolutely shouldn't have been out there? So the fans have always been there. The support has always been there. It's just been 16 years of hell. And this team has been, or this fandom has been waiting for something like this, desperately waiting to rally behind. So I'm curious how you feel as a Sacramentan, as a Kings fan, being in the building, being in the Golden One Center, hearing how loud it is, seeing the renewed fan energy. How has that been for you?
It's incredible. It's something that I personally have been waiting for. I mean, I don't want to say my whole life, but I mean, yeah, basically my whole life. I mean, since I was 11 years old, they have not been in the playoffs. So in that part, like you said, like there's a professional side of it too. And, we're not sitting up there at media row high-fiving and freaking out and screaming, and I'm seeing it from everybody. I mean, even some people that might want to admit it on media. Like there is a lot of emotion from people that cover this team. You and I and Chris are people, like the 3 that come to mind that have grown up in this area and been a huge part of like what the Kings fan base was, even during the bad times. We were there for those days in Arco when they won 22 games, 24 games. So the atmosphere right now is something that, like you said, the fans were here, but they're waiting for a reason to come out. They're waiting for a reason to cheer. And I think the past 2 seasons, I mean, COVID had a huge hand in it as well, but I think it kind of made it easier for fans to not want to come out. Even when the fans were let back in the building, I think people were saying, maybe if there was a decent product to see, maybe they'd be more inclined to be more interested. But no, what reason was there to come and watch a team lose? I mean, what reasons are to put money into something? I mean, it's like I watched the movie Fever Pitch. With Jimmy Fallon. It's a Red Sox movie, but like I liked it as a kid. But there's like a scene where he's obsessed with the Red Sox, and he is talking to one of his students, and the student says, you know, you love the Red Sox your whole life, but have they ever loved you back? And it's like, you know, at a certain point for Kings fans, they probably stopped giving it the attention that they gave it when they were younger or 16 years ago. I mean, everybody that is a Kings fan has gone, no matter if you're 60, you're 40, you're 22, whatever. You've got almost 2 decades of seeing the Kings play meaningful basketball. And by meaningful, I mean actually meaningful, not just meaningful to you because you're there and you're there with your parents or your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever. Meaningful as in they are playing to win games and compete. This team is playing to win games, to compete for a much bigger picture than just making fans feel good for one night. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot more important. And to me, that's why it's so much fun being in the building every night. And I can't imagine how fun it's going to be in February and March when the Kings are in a playoff run, you know, or if they do make the playoffs and they're in a playoff game, what we saw against Utah could be, we might see 3 or 4 games of it. I mean, you never know at home in a playoff series. So I'm cherishing it. I'm enjoying it. And the part of me that is a media member, I'm making sure my work gets done and I'm staying locked in. But there's a 11, 12-year-old, you know, Frank inside me that's just like saying, okay, like I'm about to lose my mind. Like it's a fine line you have to toe, but I wouldn't want to do anything else. I know you feel the same way. I would not want to do anything else, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm hoping Kings fans are enjoying it too, because 20-17 through 37 games, I really did not expect that. I mean, they were projected to win 33 games this year. So I'm enjoying it, but I mean, like you, I think I want more. And as Kings fans, I want more. I want to see this team really, like as Mike Brown would say, turn the Jets on. I'll have the word out, but they have a chance to do that. They have a lot of home games coming up. The fans are selling out, 9 straight sellouts. The time to make a push is now, and it's a lot of fun what we're seeing.
Well, believe us when we tell you there's definitely some clenched fists or some curled toes or some held breath still in the media section. Even if we can't cheer and pump our fists like sometimes we want to, we're feeling it too. We feel those emotions that Sacramento Kings fans are feeling inside the Golden One Center or watching the games at home. Well, Frankie, I appreciate you so much for coming on Locked on Kings right after finishing a Return of the Roar recording. And again, you and Chris went into big detail about the fan voting, and that's a huge topic of conversation today. So now that you're done listening to Locked on Kings, listeners, hop over to Return of the Roar and take a listen to that if you haven't already. Frankie, I appreciate you. Hopefully we'll have you back on again. Looking forward to doing another collab with you and Chris and Brendan and all the stuff that we can do in the future. We're having a lot of fun covering this team this year, and damn it, we deserve it. If nothing else,
sir.
just like Kings fans deserve to support a good team. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, of course. Thanks for having me. And of course, always happy to have you and Brendan on again, doing those fun little group pods. But yeah, man, it's a fun time right now. Even though they lost last night, it's a good time to be a Kings fan, and a big one on Saturday. See you guys for the Laker game.
Big thank you to Frankie for joining me here on the Locked on Kings podcast today. Again, I will have another guest joining me on tomorrow's pod. I have scheduled Kenny Caraway from ESPN 1320's D-Lo and KC. KC will be joining me. We're going to talk a lot about De'Aaron Fox, the play especially fourth quarter De'Aaron Fox, how he's taken over games, and how the Sacramento Kings are using the first 3 quarters to set up De'Aaron Fox and optimize that fourth quarter explosion from him. Plus, we'll talk about him and his chances at making the All-Star team and a whole lot more. So I hope you will join me for that episode on tomorrow's podcast. Until then, appreciate you so much. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. My name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked on Kings, part of the Locked on Podcast Network.